Once you start building websites with WordPress and you want to go beyond the basics, you'll very quickly come to realize you need to start using dynamic data. And dynamic data comes in all different forms. Something simple like your post's title, your featured image, and so on. But it could also go up to creating custom post types using advanced custom fields and meta fields and all those kinds of good things, including things like WooCommerce. So when you want to harness that, it's not necessarily the easiest thing to do. However, the plugin we're going to take a look at today makes it considerably easier. So we're going to look at Dynamic Shortcodes. Now, this is from the same creators as Dynamic Content for Elementor, but the important distinction here is this isn't limited to Elementor. In fact, it supports an awful lot of options. Things like Breakdance, the classic editor, Elementor, Gutenberg. It's also going to be supporting Bricks very, very soon. And we can use this with dynamic content like advanced custom fields, Jet Engine, MetaBox, WooCommerce, and so on. Lots of use cases. Now, speaking of a use case, let me show you an example and then we're going to recreate that example. So I've created a very simplistic job listing. As you can see, we've got different roles, and included in each of those roles, you've got things like the title, the featured image, the description, but also some custom fields like the annual salary, the location of the job, when it was posted, who posted it, and the last time it was edited or updated. Now, these are really simple examples, but once you understand how you can harness the power of these shortcodes, you can do an awful lot more with them. Let's take a look at how we would recreate something like that, and we'll take a look at some more examples as we move through this video. So first of all, I've gone and installed Dynamic Shortcodes, and if we go in there, we're going to open up the settings section, and this allows you to choose where and when you want to use Dynamic Shortcodes. So we can use this with the standard native title, content, and excerpt as part of posts. We can also use it with the Gutenberg block editor content, and in this example, Elementor. Other options are available should you need them. Set what you want, hit Save Settings, and you are basically set up. Now, the next thing we need to do is we're going to go into the Demo Shortcode section, because this is where we can really start to utilize what we can do with Dynamic Shortcodes and also make our lives a lot easier. So first of all, let's take a quick look. Across the top, we've got all the different sections we can use. So things like post, the user, date, the query inside WordPress, and so on. If you have WooCommerce installed, that'll be listed here. Same thing goes for things like MetaBox, toolset pods, and so on. I've got ACF installed, so that's going to show up for me. Now, underneath this, you can see select a preview post. Now, we're working with a custom post type called jobs. So what we're going to do is we're going to look for one of our jobs. So let's just do a search. There's our social media planner. Once we select that now, all of the shortcode examples underneath will reference that type of dynamic data. So you can see if we take a look, we've got things like underneath the post tab, we've got the title of the post, the ID of the post, featured image, and so on. And you also notice a lot of the times on the right-hand side we'll have expand examples. So we'll have more examples of how we can take the basic shortcode and format it to make it more useful. For example, if you open up the title, you can see inside there, we've got a range of different ways in which we can manipulate the actual content. Now, you've probably seen these inside tools anyway, but you can use these shortcodes to set everything up. And there's another way in which we can use what are called Power Shortcodes, which we'll look at a little later, which really does power up what you can do using these dynamic shortcodes. But for now, let's keep it really simple and come back and expand upon this as we move forward. Now, I'm going to leave this tab open, and I'm going to go into my pages. And I've already created a blank starting point for our particular example. If we open this up, you can see I've got a simple cover image at the top. We've got a group then with a query loop inside it and a simple post template with a basic group. This is where our content is going to sit. So the first thing we want to do is pull in the image, the featured image for each of our job roles. Now, because this is a loop, that's exactly what's going to happen. It's going to loop through all the jobs. So what we're going to do is we're going to click to add a new image. Now from here, we're going to choose the insert from URL. Obviously, we can't use the upload or media library because they're static. They're not being pulled in from dynamic data. So let's insert from a URL. It says, what URL do you want to use? We don't have a URL, so we're going to use a dynamic shortcode. So coming into our post tab, you can see we're looking at our social media planner. Let's scroll down until we find the featured image ID. Now, obviously, we don't want the ID. We need the link for the actual image itself. So let's expand our examples. And as we saw before, we now have additional examples of that particular shortcode. So if we take a look at this first one, the URL, this is the shortcode that we want to use. Dynamically, this will be replaced by this code. And this is the link to the image for that specific job role. So let's copy this, go back over, and just drop this inside this. We'll paste that, and we'll click the return. Now, obviously, we're not going to see anything inside here, which is a shame. It would be nice to see the preview, but we don't get that. Let's hit update, and let's just quickly check this out to make sure everything is working. As you can see, there's our featured image. Each one of these now will go through the loop and show us all the jobs inside this loop. Pretty cool. So now if you want to, you can apply any kind of formatting and so on to your image. So for this example, let's just come in and set a duotone because that's pretty ugly, and well, let's just make it as ugly as possible. Okay, we'll hit update, and now we're ready to go and add in some more information. So again, we can just go and add in a new element. So let's just come down, we'll say add after, paragraph in this example. It's not what we want. We want a heading. So we're going to set this to be a heading 2 because this is one of our card designs. And now we need to put in the relevant shortcode. So again, we're going to come back in. This time we're going to grab the title. So we'll say copy this and just drop in that simple shortcode. Couldn't get much easier than that. And if you want to, you can style this however you want. So with the terrible options we have inside Gutenberg itself, let's change the font family to Inter. We'll set this to be something like large, and we'll just change the appearance to something like light, just a little bit nicer. Next up, we need to drop in an excerpt, or at least some content. So we can use a native Gutenberg function for this. So we'll just add in after. We'll do a search for excerpt. Choose that option, and you can see we can control the content from here. Now it'll say no excerpt found, and that's fine. It'll still default back to the content and the number of characters that we've set, or the number of words we've set. So there's the basics. Again, let's just hit update and take a quick look. As you can see, there's the basic information inserted. So we're all good to start off with. Now, let's go and take a look at how we can reference some additional data and how we can start to modify that. Now, I've got a couple of ACF fields attached to my custom post type, things like the salary and so on. Let's come into the ACF tab this time, and you'll see any ACF fields that we've got created will be listed inside here, again, with examples, with the shortcode, which we can copy and use. Really easy. So the first thing you want to do is say how much money they're going to earn. Now, so we can say, well, copy this, and you can see it's going to copy that little shortcode. So you can come back over, add in a new option, type in what we want, and paste that shortcode in. We'll put the financial figure at the beginning of it, and now we have a basic listing. So come back over, refresh, and you can see there's our salary. Okay, that's pretty cool, but I want to format it. I want to make it look a little bit nicer. I want to have the 30,000 with the comma to separate it. You kind of get the idea. It just looks a little bit more professional. Come back to our shortcodes and expand our examples. You can see this gives us now a range of different types of modifiers that we can use. Our basic shortcode is this ACF : salary inside curly braces. However, if we take a look at this one to format the number, you can see this adds some operators or some ways in which we can modify the output after the actual shortcode itself. So we still got our opening curly brace, ACF : salary. Then we've got the pipe, and then we say what we want to do. We want to format the number to 2 decimal places. So what we're going to do is we're going to copy this, head back over into our page, remove this, and replace it. Now, let's hit update, come back over and refresh. And now we've got 30,000 with the comma and 2 decimal places. Now, the decimal places in this example don't make any sense. So again, we can simply come back in and modify. Set that 2 to 0. Job done. Hit update. We've now formatted our numeric information. Now, this is a very, very simple example of how you can modify that output, but you can go so much further. And once you kind of get a feel for how this works, you'll be able to quickly make those changes to get what you want. But the fact we've got these simple examples inside here, which we can then utilize and modify if we need to, makes it so much quicker and easier. Now, when it comes to these examples, you'll often have more than one type of example. At the moment, this is looking at integer values, but for this example, we can change this over to string. And you see this will give us different examples, which we can change things over. Not always relevant to what we want to do, but it's always worth taking a look inside the examples drop-down and see if there's more options available so you can see other things you can do. Now, let's just say you wanted to manipulate the data in a certain way. We've seen how we can easily format it, and that's cool. But you can also manipulate and do mathematical calculations and things like that on the data. So if we take a look at these first ones, we've got something really simple like just add 1 to the end of the value. Okay, can be quite useful. Let's say we wanted to say this is the annual income, or this is the annual salary, but you also want to say this is what it equates to on a monthly basis. Well, you could use a calculation like this. So you can see we've got this set up to divide it by 2. Let's just copy this, come back over to our page, and let's just go to the next line. And this time, let's use that formula. So we'll paste it in. Now, obviously, this isn't correct, so this is doing it by 2. So let's set this to be by 12. And we've now set this up to divide the overall salary by 12. So it'll show us what the monthly is. So again, let's update this. And we can see that equates to a monthly salary of £2,500. But you'll notice we've got a little problem with our values output. The number's right, but we've dropped that little separator that says 2,500 with the comma in it, like we've got the 30,000. So let's add another operator on. So come back in, we'll go after our calculation, and we'll drop in pretty much exactly the same as what we have above. So we've got the pipe, the number format set to 0 decimal places. We'll click update, jump back over and refresh, and now we've got things set up showing us the salary per year and also the monthly salary formatted the way that we want, all calculated on the fly. So if that salary changes, it'll automatically update everything. It'll update the salary output and the monthly salary. Take a look at the advertising executive. It's a lower salary, therefore it's a lower monthly salary. Hope you kind of get the idea what I'm talking about here. The benefit of using these shortcodes is, at first glance, you may think, well, I can probably do a lot of this with the tools I've already got. But this opens up a lot more possibilities to extend what you can do and create quite comprehensive shortcodes. With a calculation like this, let's just say you don't really want to have to go to the time and effort of doing this every single time. You want to use this in various different instances. So what we could do is we can actually create a Power Shortcode using this. So let me show you what I'm talking about. Let's grab this entire section. We may want to use this in other parts of our site, but we don't have to go through and type all that in every single time. So we'll copy it. So we'll Control or Command C to copy that. And this time we'll go into Power Shortcodes. Now I've already created a couple inside here, but I'm going to show you how easy it is to create one of these. Let's click New. We'll give this a name. Be careful how you name this because the Power Shortcode, as you can see underneath, is going to reference this. So don't use spaces, use underscore or dashes, and just keep it to those simple symbols if you need to put any kind of separator in there. So once we've named it, all we need to do is pop in the information we want to use. So this is our full calculations and all those kinds of things, the titles and everything. Hit Save Changes, and now we've created a Power Shortcode. All we need to do is copy this little Power Shortcodes shortcode. So again, Control or Command C to copy that. Now let's go back to our page. Let's delete this completely. And let's just put that Power Shortcode in. Click Update. Come back over to our example and refresh. And you can see it's exactly the same. We dropped the formatting in this example, but as you can see, it just means we don't have to remember all that calculation. And as you create more comprehensive shortcode groupings and calculations and modifications and things, this is where the power of using something like the Power Shortcodes just makes life a lot easier. Now, with our example currently, if we take a look at it, we can't actually click to go and take a look at the details of this job. So we'll go from our archive listing, like we can see here, to the actual page itself. So how do we go about doing that since we're using these shortcodes? Well, again, we can harness a shortcode. So let me show you. Come back into our shortcodes. We're back on our post tab. And what we're going to do is we're going to come down to where it says permalink, copy that from there, come back over to our page. We'll select our image. And what we can do is we can set this up to be linked. So we'll click on our link icon and we'll just drop in that shortcode, hit the return, update, refresh our example, and now that's become a link. And you can see that takes over to a social media planner with whatever template you've got set up, or the advertising executive. You can see how easy it is. Again, we're just using these shortcodes to be able to do very simple things. So like I say, if you're coming from something like Elementor or Bricks or those kinds of tools, a lot of this is going to be very, very familiar to you. But you can hopefully see that you can go so much further than the basic functionality, especially in something like Elementor, where you can't necessarily do a lot of what we've just seen in this example. And these are some simple examples. Okay, so you've seen how to do it in Gutenberg. It's a little different when you want to come to working with Elementor, but once you get used to it, again, it's very, very simple. So this is another example. You can see we're using the same data, the same job roles, but I've got some different information here. We've got things like tells you the day's date, tells you the date this was modified, The salary information is inside. They're using our Power Shortcode again. You kind of get the idea. Let's take a look at how we can do this inside Elementor, as it's a little different. So we're inside Elementor. I've opened up my loop and I'm editing the actual template for the loop item. Now I've got this welcome field, which is basically just a text editor field. So I want to replace this with my own custom shortcodes from Dynamic Shortcodes. So to do that, we're going to use the dynamic tags function. We're going to scroll on through until we get to the Dynamic Shortcodes, which is a new entry that's part of having the plugin installed. So we could open this option up. Then we're going to click on the little wrench icon, and then we can put in our dynamic shortcode. So I'm going to paste in what I want, and I'll explain how this works. Okay, so we've got user first name, and we've got question mark there. Now what this is going to do is it's going to pull the data from the user. It's going to grab their first name, but if no first name is available, they haven't put that information in, it's going to use the fallback. So the question mark says what comes after the question mark itself is the fallback. So let me show you what I'm talking about. Let's just publish this, come back over, and we'll refresh. So, hey Paul, today's date is blah, blah, blah. I'm logged in. It knows who I am. Now, if I open an incognito window, you can see because I'm not logged in, it now says, hey there. So we can set these simple rules inside here that if something doesn't exist, default back to this, a kind of fallback. So we don't have to worry about setting up any kind of complex conditional logic on various different parts. It's very easy. We can just use these kinds of operators. Again, this shows how you can expand what you can do with these shortcodes. And again, if we take a look this time at the date section, you can see this is going to pull up the date, but it's also going to put in the post modified date. And that's what it's going to do. It's going to set the format on there to October 5, 2023, for example. So we can format that information in the way that we want. So it's pulling in the dynamic data and then being formatted afterwards. Again, applying one of these kind of modifiers on top of the dynamic shortcode. Now, if you're an Elementor user and you've used dynamic content for Elementor, you may be thinking this looks very, very familiar. Looks very similar to the token function. And it is a similar kind of setup. It works in a similar kind of way, giving you some of the same functionality. Now, the good news is, even if you have websites using that token functionality and you update to version 3 of dynamic content for Elementor, or even using dynamic shortcodes, you can still mix and match. So you can start using the new shortcodes function without having any effect on the tokens you may have set up on your website already. So that's always good news. The other thing is, if you have dynamic content for Elementor, you'll have a special version of dynamic shortcodes included in that plugin. This includes lifetime owners as well. So you won't lose out and not be able to use this. There's more information. I'll link to the description below so you can take a look at this for yourself. But for me, these dynamic shortcodes really do open up a ton of possibilities. One of the things that's frustrated me with a lot of tools, especially when it comes to using number formats and currency and things like that, it's not that easy to format the data afterwards or to do calculations and do all these things without having some kind of coding skills. Using dynamic shortcodes, you still need to understand how they work. But once you get past that initial learning curve, you can do an awful lot with them. Now, what are your thoughts on this? Do you think this is something that opens up a lot of possibilities for you moving forward to be able to enhance what you do? Let me know in the comment section down below. And if you want to learn more about dynamic content for Elementor, you can check out this playlist next. Tons of great videos in there for you.